Episode number 172.
And the things that made both those guys successful, and this is something I've come to realize over doing this for a lot of years, they were both knew their customer really well because they were the customer.
Welcome to the Be Real Show with Travis Too Tall and Huff, where we talk about life, dreams, social media, and business.
Well, hello and welcome to the Be Real Show with Travis Too Tall and Huff. Folks, I'm fired up today. We are going to bring you some tech insights and hopefully help you bring and build your business ideas and turn it into a winning business, because I'm excited to bring you our featured guest today, David Hirschfeld. David, are you ready to be real?
I'm ready to be real.
Yeah. My man David is an owner in several businesses. One is Tekyz, which they are a web development, also web design solutions, software development, mobile apps, digital marketing, and cloud hosting. And David has also become a partner or investor owner in some of his clients' projects as they came to him maybe with an idea, and he helped them turn them into a full functioning winning business. So my man David, how's your day going today?
Oh, the day is going great. And in fact, in what you were just talking about with some of my clients, we were just working this morning with a client whose business is accelerating really fast. And so we were strategizing how to have everything ready so that he can accommodate the massive amount of business that he's growing into right now.
Wow. So, not a bad problem to have.
I love it when that happens.
Yeah. Not a bad problem to have. So when you started your business, Tekyz, what was the passion or what drove you into getting into that business?
Well, I've been in software for over 30 years. I started out working on, believe it or not, if you remember what that is, IBM mainframe software. Oh, wow. For Computer Associates and Texas Instruments. And then I did contracting work for Intel, Motorola, and Allied Signal. And then I started my own software company in 90. Wow. Which then sold to a publicly traded logistics firm in 2000, and then did a couple other things before I started Tekyz.
So which
was 13 years ago.
You're actually an owner in other businesses too. Do you mind talking about some of those then?
Yeah. So the big one would be a company called Anzu. So Anzu is it's involved in healthcare. It started out as community engagement for healthcare associations, but then quickly got into medical records and data aggregation. So we're collecting data in particular in plastic surgery world, because my partner in this business is a plastic surgeon. We now have 250 data providers. So what we do is we have an IoT device. For those of you who don't know that means Internet of Things. And we ship out this little box we put out at the practice's office. They plug it into their network. It connects to their database. We now pull back 15 years of history, all incredibly secure in a HIPAA high trust environment. And then it all gets aggregated in our cloud. And then we collect data every night after that. So we have 250 of these data providers, growing to probably close to 400 by this time next year.
Wow.
And then we give the doctors a business intelligence dashboard where they can actually, for the first time, see how they're doing, as opposed compared to the aggregate of other companies in their area, other plastic surgeons, because it's a very market-driven business.
Competitive.
And then we have now all this data that we've aggregated, and industry that makes products for plastic surgeries is crazy for this data because they don't have visibility on what happens to the products once they're sold to the plastic surgeons.
Gotcha.
And this particular business has blossomed into a bunch of other stuff. So in fact, 5 weeks ago, my partner was presenting to the FDA because there's all this concern around implants, and the FDA convened a panel for 2 days. And all these companies now that are using our data, we were brought in with them and with the medical association to show that we are actually surveilling the health related to people after they get implants. We're not just doing it cavalierly and ignoring them, but we actually now have all this history and information that we can track people and their health concerns. Gotcha. And that didn't exist in this industry before our product.
Wow. That's interesting.
Mhm.
So it's something, and also I could see that being obviously applicable for a lot of different industries in medical.
Right, and the
Eye
FDA.
surgeons, LASIK, all these different categories.
Yeah, and actually, the FDA reached out to us afterwards, asking about us doing that for other industries as well. So that's definitely something that we're looking at. It's a little early for us to jump into these other industries, but
Right.
just because.
Stay with your core focus and get,
Exactly.
I'm sure there's thousands of plastic surgeons, right? I mean,
Yeah, there's thousands of plastic surgeons, and there's a lot of manufacturers in this industry, and there's
right.
other types of aesthetic surgery like derm surgeons, and then there's almost 8,000 of those. So yeah, we're going to kind of just stay close to home for a little while longer before we really start to branch out.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Mhm.
What a fascinating thing.
So that's an example of one.
That's like a whole new business that you created for yourself, and it helps helps the clients too understand their data better.
Yeah, and people don't need help with their data. So in fact, this all led to me doing a keynote speech yesterday to a company that manages immunization records for the U.S. And so there were 100 public health officials from all around the country that came in, and I was asked through a network of people. I ended up being asked to do a keynote speech for the beginning of this conference. So I did that yesterday, and the interesting part of that is that you need all this data, right? There's so much data in the world, and if you can collect it at a very detailed level, and there's all kinds of stuff you can do with that data. But if you don't have a good story about the data, then the data doesn't really matter. And you make that story, you begin that by basically putting together business intelligence tools that give you really cool charts and graphs that you can dig in and understand the data better. But then you have to then take what you understand about the data and turn it into something meaningful from a story perspective that has value to somebody, either because it's showing them how they can get better or scare them from making the wrong decisions or whatever it is, but it's got to be a compelling story.
So it's not only important, folks, to just have the data. You need to now be able to tell the story around the data.
That is more important than anything.
More important. One paragraph could, be a lot more impactful than maybe, hundreds of thousands of records of things.
Right. Exactly.
People are not going to read those records. Let's just be real.
Right. Yeah. Well, because it's the story that moves you, right?
Right.
It's a story that touches you in some way. It's not the data. Even if you can show trends in data that are clearly obvious, that's really important. But what does it really mean? Right. What's the story that anybody cares about that makes that come alive in terms of something important?
It's fascinating. Truly fascinating. So what kind of types of businesses you guys mostly also work with? Probably some startups, but then you said all different types of businesses at Tekyz.
Well, it's a big, broad range, right? So there's one, business intelligence and data and health records. Then one of our, a real successful client of mine, a guy named Jeff Whiting, he's a Broadway producer, choreographer. And he came to us 7.5 years ago because he wanted to automate the process of creating Broadway productions.
Oh, wow.
Which there was nothing at the time. And there still isn't anything except for his app. So we created this product called StageRight. And it just took off. And I really was surprised at how well it took off, because this doesn't seem like that big an industry, and he was selling it for a decent amount of money. But the need was so strong, and plus he was so plugged in to that world that he was able to market it, and he had lots of connections, and it just really took off. So every single play on Broadway for the last few years is produced with StageRight. The Emmys, the Tonys, all the major cruise lines use it for all of their productions.
Wow.
And on and on and on and on. So that's an example of one customer. Another one that I was just talking about at the very beginning of this that's just starting to accelerate is like polar opposite to that. It's for law enforcement. This client worked for the FBI coding wiretaps. So he would listen to the wiretaps and take all the information out of that and put it in all these various spreadsheets. And then they would take these spreadsheets and then try to correlate the information. And then you'd have this wall with pictures and yarn strung between all these different images and 10 different investigators working on these big, drug rings or whatever it was, right? So he wanted to take all that data and turn it into something really visual and also be able to correlate it. So we created this product called Tekyz, and the Tekyz was used in an 18-month-long DEA trial that ended the end of last year, where they had one of the highest conviction rates on for a drug ring. Very, very high compared to what they would normally do, because normally they have a lot of suspects, but they're only able to arrest a portion and actually convict a very small portion, just because they can't hold together all the pieces of the details strong enough to build the case. In this case, 23 suspects, they arrested, I think it was 16, and they were able to convict all 16.
Wow.
And they said that's just extremely unusual, and they credit it to his software. So now all of a sudden his business is accelerating like crazy, of course, because the DA is going to a much bigger trial, and all these states are looking at now bringing him in. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So I only brought those two up because they're so polar opposite.
So different. Yeah. It's like all different types of people.
And the things that made both those guys successful, and this is something I've come to realize over doing this for a lot of years, they were both knew their customer really well because they were the customer.
Right.
They didn't necessarily know the business of it as well. So they had to learn the business after they created the product, but they knew the customer and they knew what the customer needed. And so they could create a product that they knew the people like them were going to need in the same way for the same reasons. Then they had to learn the market itself.
Right.
And that part you can learn, right? But they also knew the channels in that market. They knew they knew how to talk about the product to the customer.
Tell the story.
And that has been a consistent theme with most of my successful customers. It's the rare customer who's got a great idea in an area that he doesn't know anything about, and is able to turn that into success.
Right.
It's nice. I can't say it never happens. It happens often. But if you take 100 people that do that, you might have 10 that make it.
Right.
If you have 100 people that are building something that they need themselves because they've been doing that, then you might have 50 that make it, or 75 that make it. It makes a big difference.
So really stick to your netting, if they would want to say that, or niche, or whatever you'd say, folks that are listening today, is, if you do want to create a software, a platform, there's so many different ideas out there. That's the thing today. Is like, there's so many ideas. Ideas are kind of worthless.
Right.
Today. It's all about execution. And like you said, if you are like a Broadway producer and you already have 50 friends that are Broadway producers, you're probably going to be able to sell that software, quickly and easily. If you have no connection,
and you understand what they need. Yeah. And you understand what they need.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you're not building something based on something you think they need.
Right.
Like me trying to figure out how to, build a better software for doctors or something. You know what I mean? It's like, probably not. If you think I need to build something better for podcasters, or build something better for social media, so that people can basically manage their pages better, if anything, instead of doing stuff that basically I have no idea about. Very fascinating.
Because you know what you wish you had, right?
Absolutely.
And so, if then you build that, and you realize this has saved me so much pain and so much time, and it gives me bigger reach, then it's going to be probably true for most of the other guys doing the exact same thing you're doing.
Yeah. So software that boosts posts on Facebook that I can set the budget to, and it automatically does that for me. For clients that team members are scheduling content out and we need to boost those posts. And if there could be an automation software that would basically be able to take the actions of a human and click these different buttons and place the budget of whatever the budget was for that customer, it would be a huge time saver. So those that are out there, maybe that's another one you guys can develop for us here.
Sure. Let's talk about that after the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a huge one, because I know there's other people that have to have the same thing. If you have 25 to 100 clients and you're boosting all their posts every day, along with, everything else you're doing, there's a lot of clicking going on.
Right.
So save yourself some carpal tunnel and use this platform. So my man, we're now about to get real with you. Are you ready for our top 10?
Sure. I'm ready for the top 10.
Apple or Android?
Oh, I'm going to just say it depends on who you are.
Netflix or YouTube?
Netflix.
Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram.
Chicken, steak, or fish?
Steak.
Yeah. Laptop or iPhone?
Depends on where I am.
Depends on where you're at, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Spotify or Pandora?
Spotify.
Movies or video games?
Movies. I'm older.
Reading books or listening to books?
Oh, listening to books.
Stocks, crypto, or real estate?
A little of each. I would say stocks.
Yeah.
I would say stocks and real estate. Stocks and real estate, maybe a little crypto.
Little crypto, a little 10%, 5% distribution crypto. I think this is the future. Yeah. Oceans or lakes?
Oceans.
Nice. So right now, when you wake up in the morning and you're brushing your teeth, my man, you're getting ready for the day. Why do you love being you?
I love being me because every day I have new opportunities that I get to the opportunity to either find or create. Not everybody gets to do that. A lot of people, look at their day and they have to do something. It's another task in the day. But my days aren't like that. My days are all about opportunity, networking, building, designing, and helping customers grow. And so it's just always an exciting day.
And it's amazing how many of some of your customers have turned into, like you said, some of your businesses you own now too.
Yeah, a couple of them. Yeah, I honestly am very careful not to do that with most of the people I work with. But every once in a while, something comes along, and I just can't ignore it. It's just like too good an opportunity. It makes too much sense, and the person who's making the offer is just too compelling.
Right. And that's the best part about the kind of business that we do, in that you could leverage some of your services and team to help basically do the back end work that they need.
Right, exactly.
It might save them a lot of money because, as you know, people do price gouge. I mean, there's in marketing, there's two tiers. It's like they're dirt cheap and you can get shit done in India or Africa or Sri Lanka or wherever for dirt cheap, but it's kind of crappy. And some of it's good, but you have to keep a real close eye on that. Or just like this upper tier of insane prices. You know what I mean? Where these agencies are charging $60,000, $70,000 for a logo design.
Right.
It costs them $300 of team time. It's no way. But it's true. Right. I mean, it's just there's two tiers. There's people on Fiverr, and then there's people that charge $10,000 to do a social media campaign monthly.
Right.
It's just very interesting in marketing. So it's hard to find out the price.
Same thing in software.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard that. Software.
I have heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard it's either
you get a quote
too cheap, and it's they tell you everything and they don't deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's the other side, right, where it's so expensive that you're there's no way I can afford this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you might get say, hey, I want to build an inventory management system. You get a quote. Sure, we can do it in 3 months for $10,000. Everybody should run from that, because that's code for it's really going to cost $40,000 before you finally fire them 2 years later.
Right.
Because it won't be done.
Right. So what? How, in that process,
or the opposite.
What's the best way to kind of negotiate that process?
Yeah, or the opposite. You get somebody that the other end of the range is, and I'm not making this up. The other end of the range is you get $750,000, a 9-month project, right, for the exact same requirements, $15,750,000, right, and the team that's offering $750,000. The problem is they may be exceptional, and in 8 months they'll finish a system that's perfect and QA'd deeply, and they and maybe not. They may not be that skilled a team. They're just really skilled at marketing their team.
Right.
So, but regardless, usually there's a reasonable somewhere in the middle, and then it's just a matter of vetting the teams. And that's the hardest thing to do, is how do you vet software teams? In fact, I've got an article coming out on this about what happens when you're in the middle of a project and you have this feeling that the team that you're with is not cutting it. Ooh. How do you know that it's really the team, or it's as opposed to it's you that's causing the problems, or that these are normal problems because you've never built software before, so you don't know what's normal, right?
Got you. Very interesting. I can see all three of those coming up. Yeah, absolutely, for people.
Right.
Because it's a scary thing, because a lot of them, this is going to be an investment.
It's a big investment.
It's an investment.
The time is as much an investment as the money.
Right. Because you're going to be involved too. Right. I mean, as far as like the person that's going to be helping you develop it, it's like, yeah, my man David and his team can help me develop this Facebook app tool, but they're going to also probably need my buy-in and time. And then also once you get the product finished, I'm going to need to market it. You're not going to sell me marketing it for me. So I got to do that. That's when the hard work begins.
And there is no such thing as finished.
Right.
Because your business starts after version 1. The software is not ever done because all you do. So here's something else I kind of try to explain to people. The idea between a minimal viable product, which we call an MVP in our industry, versus a version 1. And I don't know if that's a common phrase that's come up in some of your other podcasts.
Absolutely.
But minimal viable product. The idea of that is the least amount of functionality that can deliver value to a client, so that you can give it to them, and they have potential of being able to now use this to automate some function, and it's not missing anything that they would need to where they say, no, it's not usable yet. So it's the minimum amount of work you can do to start to get value out of it. It's not to generate income. So when you put an MVP out, most people think this is the least amount I need to do so I can start to sell it. That is not right. It's the least amount you can do. So now you've got enough of a product where you can get real feedback from the market.
Real tests, get real, beta testing, and then figure out what's the ins and outs of this thing.
And you learn what the real product needs to be at that point. And you may be close and you may not be close, but you should not do it with the idea you're going to generate revenue from the MVP. Okay. You may have 1 or 2 more iterations before you finally have a product that is marketable. Gotcha. And that's so people need to think about it. And then once you've got the marketable product, you also have developed a roadmap for initial roadmap for developing future functionality that the market also says they need.
It's very fascinating. I love that. So make sure, folks, that if your first goal should be getting that MVP, right?
Yeah, right.
You know what that looks like, so you can get the either investors on board, or you can also get enough feedback to understand where do people find the most use out of this thing.
Right. Yeah, and then and to get to that MVP, it goes through several phases. But the first phase is identifying requirements of a more fully fleshed out system, and then scale, and then walking back through those requirements, pulling everything out that adds and it's a hard process to do that doesn't have to be a part of the MVP. That's probably the hardest thing for a software developer or an entrepreneur to do, is pull out the features that they feel that they need, but they can probably just barely survive without. You want it to be small, short development, inexpensive as possible to get an MVP out, but it's really hard to maintain that discipline. Then build the prototype first. So a prototype, a high fidelity mock-up. So this is not a real product. This is just the screen designs, but they're built using tools where it looks like a finished system.
Gotcha.
So drop-down lists and drag and drop and things like that all work in a high-fidelity prototype. But you can create that relatively quickly, and then you can take that to your market and get some early confirmation from them that you've got the right idea, that the thing flows properly, that it has the right user experience, that they want to start using it now. And if you did it right, they'll think the product's already done.
Wow. And then pre-order or something.
Then you start development, and you don't write a line of code with few exceptions until that prototype is completely finished.
Got you. And it seems like a prototype would, for most part, depending on the business, would help investors understand the product too, right?
You can actually use that prototype to raise money.
Right. So that's what I figured. Yeah. It seems
exactly.
Yeah. They can at least understand the process and see what the value would be and see how it would work. And outside of just it being on paper or on some process flow chart or something like that you've seen.
Exactly. Or even mock-ups that have lines drawn, or where you can just click from one screen to another, really simple flows, where you can see the finished design, but you're just clicking between screens. The problem is you don't really get to learn how the product functions.
So a high fidelity prototype.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fascinating. That's awesome.
And most firms don't do that, and I don't really know why. That should be the only way you design a product.
Right. So that's your first step. I mean, the first step is the MVP and then the high fidelity prototype. And then the next step is, after you've had buy-in on that, then you need to start getting even more serious about this investment.
Right. Well, the first step is the requirements for an MVP, and then the high fidelity prototype.
Got you.
And then you build the MVP.
Got you.
Yeah.
Fascinating. What is right now when you get going for the day? How do you start your day? Do you have a certain routine or something that gets you going?
Yeah, I get up. Usually, it depends on the day, right? If this is an action day, then I get up, get dressed, and start going on meetings.
Right.
If it's a work day, I get up and I go to my computer and I parse through all the communications from the night before.
Right.
And then start working forward on all the new initiatives.
Got you. So based on your day is kind of how you set that up.
Right, exactly. And also what I've got going on the rest of the week, because maybe I have a lot of preparation to, like yesterday, I did that keynote speech, and it was an hour long to a kind of an important group of people. And so my days prior to that for a couple of weeks were all about crafting that speech.
Absolutely.
Making it interesting, making it really entertaining.
Right.
And
it's hard to keep people entertained for an hour.
It is.
I mean, we do our best here, but we don't usually, we're not in front of a keynote, it's a lot different.
Right, exactly. It's got to be deep and thoughtful and also keeps them engaged and entertained. So it's kind of a hard line to walk. I think I did okay.
Good job, buddy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that something you like to do too?
I do like public speaking. Yeah.
That's
it's
awesome.
fun. It's fun to get up in front of.
Puts you on that edge and gives you that edge too,
Exactly. Makes you feel like, plus it's very validating that people want to listen to what you have to say.
Absolutely. Plus also you're giving a great sales presentation to these people, so they can pass on the word about your business or whatever you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I never make that the intention of it. That is the objective, is that they liked it so much they want to engage with me in some way, but it's not about, the presentation is not about me.
It's not a sales deck. Basically.
No, it's about whatever their thing is, right?
Right. But usually, I mean, if you're a keynote, let's just be real, folks. There's an implied endorsement into your credibility, so it's an instant credibility.
But it raises the bar because now you've really got to prove that they picked somebody who really is credible, right?
Right.
Otherwise you put the company at risk that you're doing it for, or the organization, because now they're wondering, how did they pick this guy?
That's very
so.
True.
This one was about the unintended consequences of disruptive technology and how it affects healthcare, and which I talked about healthcare only a little in it. The rest of it was all about unintended consequences. And I opened it with let me give you an example of an unintended consequence. So I set up a development office, which I'll share this story because I think it's interesting. I set up a development office in Pune, India. I started doing that in 2009. Because we built an offshore team there, but it's our offshore team, and these are like exceptional developers. This isn't like working with somebody who would quote something at $15,000 and I'll be done in 3 months. These are like top developers. But anyway, so I started traveling in 2009 to India, and India is the place of just such extreme differences from what we're used to in the United States. So I'm walking around, my jaw's hanging open because I'd never been there before, and it's just amazingly different. But one of the things that's really different there is the traffic. It is unbelievably thick, and especially in Mumbai. And Pune is a 5-hour drive east of Mumbai. 3 of those hours are in traffic.
Wow.
And the traffic, so I have a photograph through my windshield from 2009 that you look through it, and all you see is these 3-wheel motorized rickshaws, a sea of them, hundreds of them, and like 1 or 2 cars if you look in between them, because that's the way it was. And I traveled to India another 9 times over the next 6 years, and it was always the same. Just all these 3-wheel rickshaws and motorized rickshaws. That's their form of taxi. Then I didn't go for 18 months, and I landed again in mid 2016, and I immediately noticed they're all gone. There's millions and millions of these vehicles, and there's instead of it being 20 of these to 1 car, it's now 20 cars to one of these rickshaws. I thought, how is that even possible? I thought maybe government regulation because they contribute to pollution. Anyway, so I get to the office and I ask Shalaka, I said, Shalaka, what's going on with all the rickshaws? They're all gone. She said, well, Uber came to town and Uber won't approve them for Uber drivable vehicles. So they basically completely, in just 7 years, because they started the same year that I started traveling there, in 2009. And these guys weren't sitting around when they founded the company saying, just imagine in just a few years, we'll be able to eradicate motorized rickshaws in Southeast Asia.
Wow.
They weren't thinking like that. But because they had certain standards, this mobile app that's tied to a GPS for limo service basically completely displaced the classic car in India and all the drivers associated with it and the manufacturers that built them.
Wow.
Overnight.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So that's one.
So that's just part of the thought that sometimes these software can really disrupt.
They have no idea about the types of disruptions they'll ultimately create, or even sometimes when they're creating them.
Right.
They don't because they're not intended, right? They're not intending to make those disruptions. That's why the presentation's all about unintended consequences of disruptive technology.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I visualize that a lot of doctors will be doing that, like going to people's houses.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of like the doctor's office kind of changing, like they come to you and.
Well, it used to be that way.
I know. Yeah.
Right.
You hear these stories, and then now I think with technology too, you see certain things where they even have, robots that can perform surgery on the road.
Right.
And so
as a matter of fact, one of the products I talked about was this drill that's coming out. So if you think of orthopedic surgeons, they use a hammer, a drill, and a saw, right? These are the three favorite tools of an orthopedic surgeon. And those three technologies have not changed in like 100 years, pretty much. But there's a new drill coming out, and the guy who invented it's an anesthesiologist who basically combined the drill guide, which is like a skin protector. It's like a metal tube that you when you're drilling into a bone, you put you put the drill bit through it so that the skin doesn't get burned. He combined that with the drill bit and a separate motor and measures the torque on the drill bit, and the drill can sense exactly how thick the bone walls are when it's through the bone walls, when it gets to the end of the bone, and it eliminates the drill plunging through the bone when they get to the end. It changes it. It also puts the screw in at the perfect torque so they don't strip screws and strip bone, and these are significant problems for orthopedic surgeons that they've just always dealt with.
Wow. So that one's going to definitely revolutionize their industry then.
Oh yeah, in that way and in other ways. I won't bore your audience with.
I can only imagine in recovery time because there are mistakes too. Like you can't be completely perfect. Like a AI robot can help you kind of make everything more precise.
And they're combined, and they're in the process now of marrying this with some of the new robot technology, because they've been approached by them to then now put these drills on the robots.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right now, do you have a favorite app that you like using?
A favorite app?
Yeah, do you have a favorite app you like using?
I'm trying to think what's my favorite. Maybe checking stocks.
Yeah, which one do you check on stocks?
No, just the one that comes on the iPhone. I can't really say I have a favorite app. Mm-hmm. Apps to me are like point solutions. So whenever I think, like if I need to get into a car, depending on whether or not my sons have convinced me that I need to be more conscious or not, I'll grab Uber or Lyft, right? Sure. And if I need to go to a map, I much prefer Google Maps,
right?
Or Google Search as opposed to Safari,
right?
Or stuff like that. Gmail on my phone as opposed to all the other email.
Amazing.
Yeah, but so it's all point solution. Slack for a lot of the internal communications, and so it's all point solution based. I can't say there's any one app I think I need to always use that app. Yeah. It's like, what do I need to do right now? And then there's certain apps, right? There's certain apps that I just naturally gravitate to.
Well, do you have a favorite stock right now?
A favorite stock? I love Zoom.
Yeah, me too, man.
Right. Yeah, I love Zoom. I've loved Zoom. I was one of the early users of Zoom. Nobody had ever heard of it before, but I was so sick of GoToMeeting.
Right.
And it was just unreliable. And I found Zoom when it was probably in its first 6 months of life.
Wow. And
it was it was so much better and lighter. And then I've just watched it develop since then. So let me see. So I love Zoom. Of course, as a stock, Amazon has been great.
Oh yeah.
Microsoft, I bought many years ago. That has been a fantastic. I can't believe they're the only one in the $1 trillion club right now.
I know. They've just been consistently growing. And I was thinking to my dad, we were talking about Microsoft yesterday because that's one of his top positions too. He said it was very interesting because they've transitioned their business where they're doing the monthly recurring revenue instead of
right.
$400 or $500 for a license to have your computers. Now because a lot of people would obviously take those and burn copies and get all sorts of different things they do on that. And now they really got a tight timeline on when they're going to get their money, monthly.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing.
They know when it's showing up. So those are all great
right.
stocks. Those are all great stocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think now, you can't. Amazon's still pretty cheap when you think about the future.
Yeah, Grayscale Bitcoin. That's the first Bitcoin fund.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, I bought some a while back, and then of course it dropped, and now it's recovered more than recovered.
Sure,
I really debated because my friends that are really big into Bitcoin said, "You need to buy. When it was down really low, and
3,000 or something." Yeah.
Yeah, when the stock itself was down around 4.5 or 5.
Gotcha.
Now it's back up to 12, like within 3 months or 4 months, which I didn't unfortunately buy back then. I wasn't smart enough, but I'm very happy with how that's doing. So yeah, there's some really great stocks out there. I bought some Pinterest because who the hell knows, right?
Absolutely. My favorite thing, folks, is to get on the IPOs. I mean, I did Tesla, Nvidia.
Yeah, me too.
Some of those, you just can't beat the returns. Yeah, you are going to have maybe a Twitter or a Snap or something like that IPOs higher than the price, but you're also going to miss out if it doesn't ever come back. Some of those things, I agree. They come out like Zoom. I don't think Zoom's ever coming back to the IPO price.
Zoom?
Yeah. Zoom. It's up 40% already since the IPO price.
Oh, no, it never coming down. Right.
Yeah, never coming back to the IPO price.
No.
As far as some of those companies, you can just see that they're probably, going to only go up over time.
Especially if you love their products, and you can see, and you can yourself see how they're just going to keep growing. Then it's a no-brainer. You don't buy that, then you're just really not a very confident person in general, right?
Yeah,
because you should trust what you like, right?
It's always the simplest investing strategy. Anytime someone asks me, in fact, another friend asked me this weekend, I say, dude, look at your bank account. Who charges you money? Okay, you're paying $300 a Sprint. Okay, well, you need to be buying Sprint stock. I mean,
right. Or one of the best investors I knew was this family member, an older woman, and she always bought the stocks where she just loved the stores. Like she bought Home Depot right when it came out because she loved Home Depot.
Right.
And of course that went up like 100x or 1000x or whatever. I mean, but she did many stocks like that because they were always the things she just loved to use. And it's like, of course, everybody's going to love this. And they just went public. So why, of course, I'm going to buy it because I continue to buy here.
Yeah. It's so smart.
Right? Well, that's what my thinking on Zoom too, because I've been using Zoom. And it's clear to me they're going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Changed my podcast. We were doing it on Skype and I remember so many drop calls and so many issues, and we transferred to Zoom. It just changed our lives as far as and so put them out there in the universal love. Zoom, baby. It's the most legit.
Yeah, right, exactly.
If you could sit down tonight for dinner with anyone in the world, who would it be?
Oh, that's a tough question. Let me see. That's almost one that I really had to have in the back of my head a little bit thinking about because there are so many
on the
people.
Spot.
I'd love to sit. All right, I'd love to sit down with Warren Buffett.
Oh,
love to sit down with Bill Gates. I'd love to sit down. Let me see. I'd love to sit down with Ocasio-Cortez. Just somebody so young that's able to gain that kind. And I'm not saying. I'm not trying to push a political agenda here, but somebody that long that's able to get that kind of attention and seen as a highly credible person by a large group of people and a total wacko to a large group. But regardless of how you see her, nobody can deny what she's been able to accomplish at not even 30 years old, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are some people that really rise up in my estimation as people I'd want to. Oh, of course, just because I think it would be Quasar, because I have through an acquaintance I know somebody who's sat down with Elon Musk, and what a Quasar personality and brilliant, brilliant thinker.
Truly. And unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable thinker. And yeah, that would be a fascinating panel of people to sit down with, man.
Yeah, unbelievable vision, right? Oh, very different, really different. Yeah, who wants to talk to people that all think the same way, right?
Right.
Yeah, I want to get like wildly different perspectives.
Good jives going on there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The only two that might think alike are Warren and Bill Gates, but definitely different industries.
In some ways, in terms of investment, but one's technology and one is just pure business and investing, right?
Right. Oh, and, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk to Bill Gates just from the perspective of what was his decision process like as he made all the various decisions along the way doing Microsoft.
Oh yeah, antitrust and all those different things too. Remember?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Tough times too. It was scary at some points.
Yeah, right. Well, it was scary when Netscape started to become the internet de facto standard, and Microsoft almost missed the internet.
Right.
Right. But then they did miss the mobile phone market, but you go back to much earlier years, and they killed IBM.
Right.
Well, IBM's still a big company. They didn't kill them, but they
had to pivot hard. They pivoted hard to a different kind of business, really. At the end of the day, right?
But they took the knees out from under IBM.
Right.
And just what was the thinking like at that time? What were the decisions? Yeah, I'd love to know what he was thinking as he made each of those decisions and kept kind of moving everything along.
Yeah, it's truly fascinating. I could see him having a bigger role with Berkshire too at some point if something happened with Charlie and Warren.
Yeah, who I wouldn't want to talk to? I don't know if this is more interesting to you or not, but I wouldn't want to talk to Steve Jobs.
Really?
No, because I think Steve Jobs was one of these visionary megalomaniac kind of people.
Right.
And when he had an idea in his mind, he just knew that he was going to pursue it. I don't know that he would be able to articulate why he made the decisions at the times he did.
Yeah.
At least from what I've read about him. I've read quite a bit about him.
Right.
And he just made everybody around him miserable.
I know. I've heard that. Yeah. I've heard he made a crazy work environment.
Yeah. I mean, like Musk, but worse.
Right. Tim Cook is really taking the company to the next level too. So, I mean, proven
absolutely.
He's done a great job, I think. And most of these companies you look at, even Uber or some of these where there's a new CEO come on, a lot of times they really take it to the next level.
Yeah. And some of these guys, they made a fantastically big company because they had the right product at the right time, and they recognized that they had to turn this into a category.
Right.
So that, and they defined the category, and they did a good job articulating that message. And then they didn't make any major mistakes.
Right.
So, right. I mean, they're just some like Tinder.
Right.
I think would fall into that because those guys, their story, they were trying to build a payment system.
Right.
They were working in the incubator trying to payment. And then one of them came up with this idea about what if they wanted some way to connect with people better, on apps. And they said, the one partner convinced the other, says, okay, fine, let's just take a break on this payment system and do a quick prototype, a real product prototype of this. They spent 6 weeks, threw together a really simple, dumb app, and it just took off.
Wow,
they're like, holy cow, there's something here.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those real accidental things.
Yeah, Airbnb too, absolutely. I mean, those guys they struggled along the way to figure out how they were going to make their platform, and it really took off when they started renting airbeds at a conference, and they're like, wow, we could rent airbeds in our room here and make a little extra cash and they have a very interesting story. Brian and the other co-founder, they have a very interesting story. They changed a whole bunch of industries. I mean,
they've changed, but I would say that it wasn't just the right product at the right time with the right message. They really built on that. Those guys did a great job innovating their solutions over a long period of time.
Absolutely.
So I want to give them more credit than like Tinder.
Right. And they worked at it for many years.
They worked at it. Now they're making lots of people rich.
Yeah, I like to be on that cap table right there.
Well, plus all the people now that are renting their homes out, Airbnb.
Yeah.
They created revenue for millions of people. Yeah, right. For millions of people that didn't have any opportunity to generate that income before.
Yeah, these rooms were just sitting vacant.
Yeah.
So exactly. It's very interesting. Yeah, vacant room. Now you got like Turo and all these different ones that are renting cars, and so interesting. My man, can you give our listeners one last real talk thought?
Yes. If if you have an idea you want to pursue, oh no, actually, I'm going to give you a different thought. I think we talked a lot about startups already, but if you already have a business, but you find yourself just sort of stuck in a malaise because you're just overwhelmed, you probably need to automate a lot of the workflow in your business. And that's the other thing that people don't realize, how much they can automate in just their existing business. So if you've got an idea for a startup and it's something you really know well, go after it. Just take the chance. If it's an existing business and you're just stuck and mired, look for somebody that understands workflow automation and talk with them. I bet you they can free up like 30% of your time with very little effort.
That's fascinating. That's true. It's very true. There's so many different workflow automations out there that if you're clicking too many times, if you're doing this too many times, you got to figure a solution.
Well, you just talked about one, right?
Oh, yeah, dude. That's a huge one. That's a big one, man. Trust me, for us social marketers and advertising agencies and PR companies, they're all having to do this. Facebook is making it more complicated to boost posts. They're giving you more options. Recently, they just changed it so every boost post actually has the WhatsApp messenger. And if you don't want that, then you have to change it. So that's an extra 2 clicks just to do that. You have to maybe take 6 clicks per boosted post.
Right. Yeah, times 1,000.
Times millions of posts going out every day by brands and marketers that are trying to do this. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's something there. Where's the best place for people to find you, my man?
Well, you can find me by sending me an email to David at tekyz.com, and Tekyz is spelled Tekyz.
Well, folks, you've been hanging out with my man, David Hirschfeld, and Travis Too Tall and Huff. I want to thank you again for your time today, and let's keep being real.
What another epic episode. And if you enjoyed the episode today, can you please do me a favor and subscribe to our podcast, The Be Real Show, on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform, and also take a little time today, if you don't mind, and give your boy T Huff a review. I would really super appreciate it, and thank you so much for listening today.